a red flag flying here.
Hello and welcome back to The Social Ties. I'm so excited to have you here and my special guest today. For regular viewers, you'll know that we talk about community organising. We talk about people who want to make a difference in their communities and in the world. And for those regular viewers, you will also know we tend to get a bit political. Today is one of those days, and I'm really excited to have here with me Alex Mays from the Breakthrough Party. Hello, Alex, how are you?
Hi, Laura. Yeah, no, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm really excited to have you here for starters. I've been angling to get you on this show for quite a while. So yeah, let's just dive right in. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess like when it comes to politics, I came in quite late into it. I wasn't the sort of child that had like a trade unionist dad, and I was like, getting involved in getting involved in protests from a young age. So I sort of came into this quite late. It all sort of really, I guess, got supercharged when I moved up to Manchester about 8 years ago and I retrained as a journalist. And it sort of coincided with the start of Corbyn in 2015, really, like the leadership election. And from there, like, I think, a lot of things do politicize you. We had Brexit. And then following from that, obviously, we had the 2017, 2019 elections. We've had COVID since, and so many different, austerity as well. So all of these things I think built up over time and politicized me further. Like I was a Labour Party member from 2018 to 2020, and I think like everyone after the 2019 general election felt quite disillusioned, quite angry, a range of emotions, really, mainly negative ones. And I think like after into 2020, before the pandemic, I was sort of gearing myself up to go, well, okay, like, we've been, Labour's been defeated and this is terrible, but I feel like I need to sort of go back in and try and do something. So I started training as an organizer and I was sort of going through that process. Pandemic hits, I'm furloughed, looking at the way the Tories are managing the pandemic. It's absolutely terrible, the response. And, a lot's been said about the care home deaths and, locking down too late and all of the different failures of that. But then what I sort of found with that as well was just under Keir Starmer, Labour were just offering no opposition whatsoever to anything that was happening. And I feel like for me, it was death by a thousand cuts. I don't really know what particular thing that happened that made me go, that's the moment I'm leaving. But I think there were just so many different things that happened over that period. We just like, I just don't recognize this party anymore. So I did like a lot of soul searching sort of from like the summer of 2020 until the end of 2020. And I was just looking around for something to get involved with. I think that's the thing, like when you think of like left-wing parties, you think there's gonna be loads of them out there. And I was like, and at the time there wasn't really, there was a couple, but they were quite old school. I think like old school sort of like left-wing socialist parties, and they weren't really doing anything particularly different from what I saw. And I was in a WhatsApp group, as we're all in lots of WhatsApp groups, in a WhatsApp group with a few friends sort of talking about it and saying like, why isn't there a party out there that's doing this? And then one of them just sort of said like, why don't you do it? And like from there, I started, I sort of at first took it as a bit of a joke, but then like I started thinking about it more and more, and I went like, why hasn't anyone done this? Roll forward 2 years later, I know why now. It's very difficult, but but like at the time I was like, oh, okay, like I'll have a look into it. Went through all the rigmarole and went, do you know what, actually, yeah, I'm going to do this. And registered the party in January 2021, and it's just, from there it's just been, week after week, month after month, it's just grown, and it's, this pretty awesome thing now. So yeah, it's just been a bit of a roller coaster really over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of our viewers and listeners will resonate with that journey through the Labour Party. I know there was that, after the successive election defeats, that just seemed to get harder and harder. And then when Keir Starmer came in and sort of reneged on all of his promises, it did sort of seem like, at which point do you draw your line? And I know everybody had a different stage, and I very much sort of echo your sentiment that I don't know my goalpost kept changing. I was like, right, that's it. If this happens, I'm going. And then it happened. And I was like, right, well, if this happens, I'm going. And I think a lot of our, as I say, our listeners will sort of resonate with that journey. Have you been surprised since starting the Breakthrough Party of just how popular you've become? Did you expect it to take off like it has?
It's so difficult to say. Like, I'm quite a I always want more. So like there is that element of like, I think it's been amazing the response we've had so far. And I am really like, I feel very grateful for like the people that have got involved and given so much time and energy to it. You know, all the people online that support us and like, you know, talk about us. I really, really appreciate it. But there's always that part of me of like, we could always do more. So I'm always thinking like, how, you know, how can we get bigger? Because there is like a hell of a lot of people out there that are politically homeless. You know, there's like, you know, I don't know how many people have left the Labour Party, but it's something like over 200,000 people, isn't it, who've left the Labour Party. They haven't all just disappeared off the face of the earth. They still exist, but I think a lot of them, understandably so, are still feeling like an element of like trauma. I think from the period that's, you know, from the general election loss, but then all the way up to like now, I think because socialists have been totally marginalized from the, you know, the PLP and just the general Labour Party as a whole. So I can understand why, and so I think people aren't very trusting of new parties, and they're a bit like don't know how I feel about committing, and you know, there's a lot of people out there. So I am like, you know, very like happy that we've got as far as we have done so far. I think it's, you know, considering the amount of work it takes, and I'm not exactly a well-known figure on the left at all. Like I'm very new to this, right? And I think, you know, I think the fact we've managed to grow as fast as we have without someone that is like well known on the left leading it or driving it is like, I think is a credit to everyone that's involved in the project. But yeah, like I always want more. I always want to grow and get bigger and do us able to do more really. And you know, I'm hopeful for over the next sort of one, you know, up to the course of the next general election. I think we will see a lot more people join. Like I think it was something like 61% of people in a later survey said they want a real opposition to the Labour and the Tories, and I think that we are offering that. And I'm hoping that translates to people that will join the party over the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, and I think you know, you were just saying there about people being politically homeless and looking for another alternative. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do feel like a lot of people think we're in a two-party system. You either vote Tory or you vote Labour. Everyone else is a wasted vote. How do we change that narrative? How do we sort of try and give a smaller party like yours, you know, a reasonable chance of success?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question, isn't it? Because we obviously as a party, we support proportional representation, and I think we absolutely should be pushing for that system change. I think that is, you know, if we want a real democracy, I think that's where we need to head. But in the meantime, because ultimately like Labour and the Tory, it's not in the interests of the Tories or Labour to change the voting system, because well, Labour may be more used, so you could argue they probably would benefit from PR, but you know, I think they think because they are going to probably win the next election, they don't need PR. So I think in the meantime, for parties that are smaller, there has to be a level of strategy, and we have to be really clever about how we go about our business. So that means, you know, not doing what some smaller parties try and do, which is running lots of constituencies. It's focusing on key targets that you can build a presence in over time. You know, we're starting to do that process now. And like, this is the thing with all of this, it takes time. Like it really, really takes time, and it takes people on the ground. It takes, you know, actually working in the community and doing the groundwork from the grassroots. It can't just be an overnight thing. And I think that's the thing. I think people are sort of expecting a new party to just be like standing in every seat, or standing, you know, or already have branches in every corner of the UK, and it's like that just isn't going to happen, unfortunately. Like it is a slow process and it is a challenge, but I think we have to be strategic. I think that's the best way that you can sort of counteract the first past the post system. It's focusing all your resources and efforts on target seats, and I think we just need to change the narrative entirely. Like the thing is, like, you know, I hate this. I think this is the thing, isn't it? First past the post as a system ultimately allows you only to vote for the least worst option. That's pretty much how it is. Like, so, you know, this idea of tactical voting and the idea that like you have to sort of hold your nose and vote Labour. Like we just need to totally get away from that way of thinking and say, I'm actually going to vote for what is in, vote for what I actually believe in the most, rather than just like this is the least worst option. So we have to change that mindset. We have to be strategic, and ultimately we need to push for PR as well.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like you've got it all sorted. I mean, sounds like you're going to win the next election to me. I'd like to get your opinion on, you mentioned about the fact that the Breakthrough Party doesn't have a famous leader, somebody that, you're not as well known as Jeremy Corbyn yet. But at the same time, we have a lot of ex-Labour people who want Jeremy Corbyn to start a new party because it's Jeremy Corbyn. But also those people are the same people who want to shout for grassroots activism and grassroots parties. In my mind, you can't really have one and the other at the same time. What are your thoughts on that?
It's such a difficult conundrum because we get this question all the time, and we get like, have you spoken to Jeremy Corbyn, or have you spoken to Mick Lynch, or have you spoken to the Socialist Campaign Group of MPs, or, and like, of course, like, there's a few of the Socialist Campaign Group MPs and Jeremy follow us on social media. So like they are aware of us and what we're trying to do. But I think people could be disappointed if they wait for these people to start a party, because I ultimately don't think it's going to happen. Like, we might look back in 2 years' time and I'll look back at this interview and go, I was so wrong. But but I can't see it happening. I'd be really, really surprised if, whether it was Jeremy starting a party or Socialist Campaign Group or whoever. And I think it's such a difficult one, because I think on the one hand, having high profile figures involved in a party, I think you'll get your membership that way. I think you get thousands of people joining just purely based on who it is. Which is obviously a benefit. And like, that's like the problem for most parties on the left at the moment. They don't have mass, they're not big enough. And like ours included, like we've got 1,000 members, about 2,500, including like sign up supporters, which is great. But like, we always want to be bigger. So you do sort of go, well, if we did have those famous faces, as it were, famous political faces within the party, would that increase? Probably yes. But then you also, there's the other hand of like, you don't want to just rely on these figures. Like, what I've sort of experienced so far is that you get a lot of people that talk the talk and go, oh, we'd love this new party and this would be great. But then ultimately, when it comes to actually doing, like, willing to do the work, they go quiet. And that's not, sounds really brutal, but like there has to be an element of no one's going to save us. We got to do it ourselves. And that's why, like, we're as a party, because I'm not well known as well, like we do have to rely more on trying to do that work in the community and building from the ground up. And I think that is, we've been sort of forced to take that approach. And not only forced, it's probably for me the preference out the two routes. So I think that is important. I think we need to build, in any organization, you want to build resilience, you want to build a membership, an active membership. And I think if you rely on messianic figures or anyone that's high profile figures, you kind of I think you could encourage almost that level of like low activity and low engagement once they've actually joined. So yeah, I'm all for grassroots organizing and trying to build from the ground up, personally.
Fantastic. I think I'm of a similar mind to you there. I think that's the way you build your strong foundations, isn't it? And in terms of sort of building those foundations, what is the Breakthrough Party's policies? What's your platform, and what are your priorities that you're trying to sell in order to get people to be active and join your party?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of policies, I think there's we've sort of got 10 core policies. We've got about 150 in total, but usually the focus around work, around housing, around the NHS, around climate change, around public services, and community as well. So we advocate for a £16 minimum wage, end to 0 hours contracts, protecting people working in the gig economy, and like in apprenticeships and internships, looking at like the nationalisation of energy, water, public transport, mail, broadband, advocating for a global Green New Deal. I think that's really, really important. And like rent controls, like again, another really important policy, like like other just things that like as well, like I think we try and hit like three different, like the elements around social justice and climate justice. I think these are really, really important for us. And also like around community, which I don't think gets mentioned enough, but like we're really keen on the idea of community wealth building, similar to what's being done in Preston. I think that's a really good model that I'd love to see, and we would love to see in like communities up and down the country. So yeah, there's a lot of different, in terms of our policy platform, there are a lot of different policies, but we try and focus on the core ones that will sort of deal with the imminent, cost of living crisis, which I think is really important. But then also we try and look at, stuff which is like bigger than that, so like around climate change as well. But yeah, and also like, what I try to sort of suggest as well, and we try to suggest as a party, is that we want to sort of like have policies that just resonate with as many people as possible. So, with young people, I think young people, for example, are just totally been abandoned by politicians. So we're trying to really be a home for them. Like, I talked about the minimum wage before, but like we believe in the abolition of of tuition fees and student debt. We believe in, as I said, rent controls and stuff like that, and like because rents are ridiculous at the moment, like so ridiculous. Like in Manchester, where I live, well, just near where I live, it's 20%. It's gone up in the last year. So, it's just totally, like I feel, I'm 32 now. I grew up, my first job was in the same year as the financial crash. Like that was like, so I basically all I've known is really crisis, like financial crash, austerity, Brexit, pandemic, and now cost of living. But then like I think of like young people like who are like, students now, or like sort of like in their early 20s. It's like I couldn't even imagine, like it must be so like even harder, like it must be. So I think we've got to have policies for them. We've got to have policies for communities that have just been totally abandoned by both like the Labour and the Tories. And I'm hoping that the platform that we've put together sort of like hits all those marks.
Wow, yeah, you really have started your work and career at the worst possible time, haven't you?
Pretty much, yeah.
Do you know, I think listening to everything that you said, it sounds like a socialist utopia. It sounds perfect. Not to keep banging the same old drum, obviously, but Jeremy Corbyn was very much criticised for having a shopping list of wonderful things in his manifesto, and that ended up being a criticism for him. Do you worry that having all of these things that you want to change, it sounds to me like the Breakthrough Party really believe that society needs to be changed to benefit more people, which to me obviously would be common sense and lovely and wonderful, and yes, please. But obviously the mainstream media is something that you will have to tackle, and they will criticize anybody who tries to do that. And as I say, one of the criticisms of Jeremy and his manifesto was that it was just too much. Mm-hmm. Do you worry about that, or do you have specific things that you'll focus on in specific areas, or any way to deal with that?
Yeah, I do, because I do get it. There was like that, I think it got said, especially around the 2019 election, there was just so many, it was such a, it was an impressive manifesto, right? There was so many good things in it. And I think the media will do anything it can do to attack anything that's relatively like even close to socialism, because, it's a word that's been bastardized by the media for not just like the last 5 years, but for decades. And I think that's been across the Western world, really. And I think we've got to accept that we are going to get that criticism. I think obviously we can, as a party, can be more focused. We don't have to just, we've got 150 policies, but like on our social media, for example, like we try and, really focus in on the key policies, like around the areas that we know people really care about. So around the economy, around the environment, around housing, around the NHS and public services. So we try and really like focus on these things. Like obviously we respond to things when we need to, like obviously like this week with the illegal migration bill, it'd be totally remiss of us to just totally go, but just because like that wasn't one of the 4 or 5 things that I just mentioned, that we aren't going to respond to that and say, well, here's our policies and what we would do. So I think there has to be a level of focus in terms of like, on our leaflets, for example, like that we send out, to like when we leaflet households and stuff, the focus is around higher minimum wage, it's around nationalisation of key utilities, it's around rent controls, and it's around, there's something else as well. Oh, and just taxing the rich, like basically a more progressive tax system. So there's sort of like the 4 key points that we touch on in our materials. Obviously that's always subject to change, but we try, I think that's the thing, when we are communicating online, when we're doing our leaflets and stuff, we try and have a really simple demands. And then if people want to find out more, they can look at the website and look at all the policies that we have. Because like when you're on the doorstep, you know, even though some people are really interested in, say, foreign policy or women's rights or like different issues, these aren't the things you're going to be naturally talking about on the doorstep when you're talking to people. You're going to be talking about, you know, you're going to be talking about cost of living, you're going to be talking about housing, you are going to be talking about the NHS. So I think it's just saying to people, these are our folk, you know, these are the things that we will mostly talk about, but like there are going to be a hell of a lot of other things that you can look at in the manifesto and we can discuss when you're interested in those things. So yeah, I think that's the thing. It's all about focus.
Absolutely. And you've mentioned the NHS a few times there. I think that is something that is going to be such a huge issue for the next general election. Not least because, you know, we have a Labour Party now who aren't committing to not privatising the NHS. I mean, they're not saying those words. Would the Breakthrough Party welcome privatisation of the NHS?
Absolutely not. No. So we basically, as our commitment is to renationalise all the elements that have been privatised, reverse any privatisation, and legislate to stop any privatisation happening again in the NHS. You know, outsourcing and everything else. Like we're pretty unequivocal on that.
Fabulous. And I'm sure that is what most people want to hear from their politicians. And I can't imagine anybody wanting anything other than that, apart from possibly the people who are benefiting financially from their privatisation of the NHS, which is far too many people, in my opinion. And
unfortunately, it's the difficulty with it as well. It's normally the people that are funding like people like Wedge Street and you know, and Keir Starmer, you know, and that's the difficulty with it all, isn't it? It's like, you know, you thought that, you know, we always expect it from the Tories, right? You always expect the Tories to go down the privatisation route and trying to even get towards the point where we have basically an NHS which is similar to the American health system. But you would never expect the people that founded the NHS, the party that founded the NHS, to then also be on the side of privatisation. I just find it absolutely baffling. And it's something that I think, you know, totally on the wrong side of history with. I think the vast majority of the British public see through the scare tactics from the media and saying like the NHS isn't fit for purpose and blaming the actual institution rather than actually looking at the funding and like, well, the severe lack of funding over the last decade. Yeah, I think that's it. I think people will be looking at that in the next general election. And if neither Labour or the Tories are offering a renationalised NHS or an NHS that's properly funded, then they're not going to get votes. It's as simple as that. I think you're right. I think it's a massive issue that's just totally misunderstood.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I mean, I haven't as yet disagreed with anything you've had to say, Alex. I'm interested to know, because obviously you're a very new party. Who is it who decides the policies at this stage? And do you have a plan to make that democratic in future once, you know, you've got, I guess, conferences? I mean, is that the way you're planning to do things?
Yeah, so at the moment, our members basically lead that process. So essentially, we say to members, you're more than welcome to get involved in the actual proper policy development work, proposing policies, having the rationale to back it up. And then essentially what happens is that will then get presented to members in a meeting, we'll discuss it, and then members vote on it. And then it either gets adopted as policy or it doesn't. It's as simple as that. I think there will be a stage where we do move towards more of we look at it at annual conference and then we do a similar thing where members have a say on that and then they vote on it that way. But because we were building the manifesto last year outside of conference season, we just wanted to make sure that we had a process that was still able to work outside of that. But yeah, we think it's like it has to come from members. Like I would hate it if the party wasn't democratic in its structure, where essentially like me and a couple of other people in a room can just kind of go, okay, these are our policies and members just got to deal with that. I would just never ever want that environment. I love how democratic and open it is, and the fact that I'll literally have members just like message me out of the blue and just say, Alex, like, I really don't like this, or like they'll actually be really happy to just say, I'm not really happy with this, or I'm really happy with this. But a lot of people like willing to just say, I really think we can do this, or, you know, and feeling like they've got a voice and they've got a say rather than it just being a top-down organization. So yeah, I think that comes through in everything we do, in terms of like that the democracy is sort of just weaved through the organization.
I think it's so interesting that you've commented in that way, because I think, you know, I know we keep sort of discussing the Labour Party, and I do want to move away from that and talk just about the Breakthrough Party. But essentially, you are the alternative to the Labour Party. You know, the Labour Party are supposed to be left wing, and that open communication and that ability to disagree with things in a forum where you'll still be respected. I think the Labour Party got to a point where that wasn't happening. We saw when David Evans came in, the list of things we weren't allowed to talk about in meetings anymore, things we weren't allowed to have motions on, going to conference and having policies that were decided the year before just eradicated completely. How important is it for you to get that message out, and how important is it to the Breakthrough Party to be able to have those open forums and to be able to not silence people when they want to disagree with you?
I think it's so important. It is so important. I think because naturally, like any new organization as well is going to have its hiccups. It's going to have the things it doesn't quite get right first time. Like we've learned so much in the last 2 years in terms of how we run the organization and what we do. So like the members are involved in that process every step of the way. You know, it's so funny. And sort of going back to that idea of like, you know, it being a truly democratic organization. Like I suggested like amendments to like the constitution, for example, and all 3 of them got rejected by the membership. And it's like, that's amazing. Like I want that. Like I want people to like, I'd hate it if everyone just said, yeah, that's all fine, Alex. Yep, that's absolutely great. I'm glad that we have that. And I think it is great that people feel like they can have, as I say, people can have a voice. And, you know, when you look at Labour and what's happened in previous conferences, I know that like, you know, for example, £15 minimum wage was like unanimous, you know, like 80-90% of members or delegates at the conference wanted it, then just got rejected by leadership immediately. Same with proportional representation, same with a proper Green New Deal. All these things just got rejected. And then you still had people in the Labour Party, you know, people like in the Labour Party on the left of it and in Momentum and stuff just going, got to keep up the fight, guys, got to keep up the fight. And it's like, what? Like, how could you like be treated so poorly, like basically given zero say in the organization that you're paying money to, and you know, whether you like it or not, you are ultimately supporting by paying to that organization, and you're just not able to have a say. Like I find that really sad. And like, you know, that's what we're trying to build. You know, that the alternative we're trying to build is one that is truly democratic, and members ultimately lead this organization. I'm party leader by name only, really. Like I don't, you know, any decisions or any big decisions that are made by the party aren't made solely by me. They're made by members. And that's how I want it to be. And I'd hope that other organisations that are trying to be an alternative to Labour would be the same as well.
But it does mean you get to do all the press. Will we see you on Question Time soon?
Oh, I would. It's one of those things. I'd love to be on Question Time. I just like, the fact is though, like you can't even get, like when you actually look at the lineups of Question Time, like, oh my God, like you'd be hard pressed to find someone that's actually left wing on it. I can't remember the last time where there's actually been someone that's left wing on it. Like you sometimes get like a Labour person on there, but it's like a centrist or a right wing Labour person. And then like for balance, they've then got like Richard Madeley they had on yesterday. and you know, when you're just like, what is going on? Like I used to like, that's the thing. Like, and again, like this shows my political journey as well. Like when I was still very new to politics, like I'd watch Question Time religiously and be like, this is like the pinnacle of political debate. And then you actually look now, and you know, I'm years later, having done like, you know, been a bit more experienced with politics, you now look at it and go, it's an absolute farce of a program. And yeah, I would love to be on it. I just don't think I'll ever end up in it. I'd be very surprised if the BBC dropped the ball on that and just went, yeah, we'll let a socialist on. Like, you know, it'd be amazing. Like, but I can't see it. Like we're even, you know, I think any left-wing party, any socialist alternative is always going to face an uphill battle in getting media attention. We found that, you know, we have found that. But yeah, if someone invites me, I'll go on happily.
Well, maybe we'll start a campaign and see what we can do.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like I was going to say, even the Green Party, I don't think have been on for about 2 or 3 years. I know they talk about that quite a lot. I don't think they've been on for about since 2019, maybe. So like, it's crazy. It's crazy. You know, they've got a MP. and you know, you got like Nigel Farage going on, or Richard Tice from Reform UK, or you know, it shows what it is. It shows what it is.
It does, absolutely. I've given up on Question Time. It's too painful. It's far too painful to watch. like they are representative of the people in this country at all is just shocking to me.
You've got better ways to spend your Thursday evening.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So how are we going to get members, Alex? What's your elevator pitch? What if you could speak to everybody in the country right now and tell them they should be part of the Breakthrough Party, what would you say to them?
I think what I'd say to people, you know, if I want them to join the party, is if they want to see change, not only in their community, but in society and across the world, I would say join us and try and be part of that change. I think we've had too long now. We waited too long now to wait for someone to come up and do it for us. It isn't going to happen. And that sounds really brutal, but it's not. We're only gonna bring about change if we're willing to do it ourselves. So what I'd say to anyone that's really angry and really frustrated and feeling disillusioned and apathetic about the current political landscape and wants something different and wants to be involved, to join us.
I love that. I love that. That whole ethos is, if you want something doing, do it yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to come and save you. And, you know, we've had so many conversations on the show about things like that. We do our show Origins, which is what is socialism? And we ask people, what do you think socialism is? And the common thread is that it's community and community building and people working together for a common goal. And I feel like the Breakthrough Party, from what you said today, kind of espouses that quite a lot. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, for sure. Like we try and cultivate an environment that everyone feels included, where everyone feels a sense of belonging. And I think you're right. I think community, or that collectivity, I think is really important. And yeah, we want that to be throughout the whole organization, whether it's in our local branches that we're hoping to establish this year, just even like online platforms as well, like, or like in Zoom meetings or whatever. We want there to be that friendly environment where people feel like, yes, this is me. Like, there's nothing better for me than like ringing up a member who's only just joined the party and they just go, I literally read your manifesto and every single policy. I just went, yeah, and went all the way through. And they said, and it's amazing, like, you know, I was in the Labour Party, I never got calls, I never got messages, I never got any real contact that wasn't pretty horrible. And it's like, that just isn't the environment here at all. Like, it's just, I've never met such a lovely bunch of people that want to just bring about change in their communities and in wider society. You know, I feel really, really grateful that we've managed to cultivate that environment and attract the people that are of that same mindset. And yeah, it's all done collectively. You know, we know that we can't, you know, I can't just achieve anything on my own. And you know, I know that, and I'd never expect that we could, like, the party would not be where it is without the amazing people that are within the party. And we try and foster that collective ethos throughout it. It just wouldn't be the organisation it is without the people that make it.
Fantastic. And I think a lot of people have been missing that feeling. What is it now? 200,000 people who are without that feeling, who used to have it. So hopefully they'll see this and realise there is a home somewhere.
I hope so too. Like, we honestly, we'd love to have them. Like, we really, really would. And like, you know, I think everyone's still feeling that sense of loss. I really do think that, you know, even it's been like over 3 years now, and I think everyone's still feeling that sense of what we could have had, and we feel very angry and bitter about not having that. But there's nothing we can do to change that now, unfortunately. I really wish there was. I really wish there was a way to turn back time and try and do things differently, but there isn't. And it's all well and good us being online and saying like we're really pissed off, and like, you know, I'm very pissed off, and that's basically how I lived my life until about, you know, the end of 2020. Like, I was just absolutely pissed off all the time, very angry, you know, just saying like, oh, I wish someone would start a party, or, you know, or just, oh, everything's crap, basically. And I think the time for that is now very much over. Like, we need to start doing the work. Like, if we want to see any change in our society, like, it needs to come from us, and the work needs to start. And it is a lot of hard work, but like, God, it's going to be worth it when we do actually get that socialist government.
And I hope it all comes off. I really do. I think we're at a crisis point now. I think this is the time. Now's the time for people to act. And so if people do want to act and people want to join the Breakthrough Party, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So they just go to the website, which is breakthroughparty.org.uk/join, and it will tell people a bit about what it entails as well, like how you can get involved. Like, we're always looking for volunteers, like whether this is the thing as well. Like, we have people join who are like, been Labour members for years and years and years, but we also have a lot of people that join who've never been in a political party before and might not have that experience, that activism experience, but they might be a graphic designer, so they can get involved in designing campaign material for us, or they do IT stuff, or they, they've had experience of like doing administration work and stuff like that, and they're able to put those skills to those uses. Or like, we do have a lot of people that have been activists who we're trying to encourage to be local organizers. There's a place for everyone, and I think that's what we try and say. And those that don't necessarily have those skills yet, we offer that training, and we try and upskill our members to do what they want to do ultimately and what they're passionate about. So yeah, I would say have a little look, check out the the website, look at the join us link, and if anyone has any questions as well, like just email us at the info@email as well, and like we'd be more than happy to like arrange conversations. Like, we do lots of phone calls for people that aren't members yet, or Zoom calls or whatever. Yeah, we're just really interested to hear from people and see what they think. And if people don't want to join the party as well, that's absolutely fine. If they've got any feedback or anything, we're always welcome to hear that as well. We want to be the best alternative we can be, and that's for us really important.
Keep the red flag flying here.